Okay, friends and colleagues, we are here with Rob Baker. He's a director, managing director? Or?
Yeah, Chief Positive Deviant.
Oh, okay.
The title I gave, but I'm the managing director. Yeah,
managing of Taylor Thinking.
That's right.
So he spoke in the World Congress of Positive Psychology yesterday regarding job crafting. It's very interesting, and I think the ideas need to be spread out and applied in organization, because I found it yesterday. It's very practical. So we are lucky that Rob can spare some time with us.
My pleasure.
So we are going to understand more about job crafting and what Rob and his company is doing on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with job crafting.
Sure.
Explain us a bit.
Yeah, sure. So for me, when I explain job crafting to organizations, I encourage people to think about work like a semi-tailored suit. So a semi-tailored suit is if you go into a shop and buy a suit, the basic jacket's there, the structure's there, but you can tailor the final fit based on your individual dimensions. And job crafting takes the same approach to work. So what you're effectively doing is your basic structure of your work is there, the key tasks, the activities, but you're able to change them ever so slightly to shape them around your personal strengths, your passions, and your interests. And when people proactively shape their passions, their interests, their work, to incorporate the things that they're good at, they enjoy doing, in a way that works with the organisation, there's a number of kind of compelling benefits that kind of come from that.
Right.
And I find that most people, in the workplace, we spend a lot of time doing work and doing our jobs, but very little time actually reflecting on how we're doing our jobs and how we can make our jobs better. Okay. If you think about it, we personalise all aspects of our lives. We personalise our cars, our clothes, our holidays, but one of the areas we don't personalise is our work, or we're not actively encouraged to do that. And I think that needs to change, and that's the kind of work that I do with organisations, is around how people can create a better fit, bring their whole selves to the workplace through their jobs.
Okay, give us the context about the relation between this concept with the positive psychology movement. So where is it? Why is it part of the positive psychology?
So I came across job crafting when I was studying for the Masters in Positive Psychology, and it was under the work through Kim Cameron and Positive Organisational Scholarship. And in particular, it was around looking at organisations that were positively deviant, so those individuals or organisations that performed extraordinarily or outside of the norm. And they were saying, what are the behaviours, what are the things that these individuals, these companies encouraged? And one of these aspects was job crafting. So that's one aspect of it. Secondly, in terms of positive psychology, job crafting encourages people to reflect on their strengths and build on people's strengths, which we know is a big kind of area within positive psychology. And again, it's a case we know if people leverage what they're good at, what they enjoy doing, they not only enjoy their work more, but they perform better as well. And then kind of lastly is in terms of the meaning in life. So one of the aspects of positive psychology is around thinking about meaning and value and worth and accomplishment. And again, job crafting encourages people to reflect on that in terms of actually how can we make our work more meaningful. And job crafting is one mechanism to do that. Okay,
so if we are talking about psychology and positive psychology, usually the perspective is from the individual aspect, right? So in the term of job crafting, it seems that it crosses the organization design aspect. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, I do think. I think there's different aspects. So, job crafting can be at an individual level. It's something that, if you look at it, encourage it from team level. So there's teams, but also organisation as well. And I think for me, there's opportunities. Very much the kind of job crafting itself is something that has to be bottom up. I'd say it's bottom up, so it has to be driven by the individual.
Okay.
So it is individual as an individual process, but organisations have an important role to actually create the space, the encouragement and the energy for people to do that. But I think it can also complement from the top-down perspective in terms of work design, where actually people are saying, rather than saying this is a specific job that we want you to do, we're going to design it for you. Actually what we want you to do is co-create that opportunity to get people to actually think about their work differently, so that they're actually the person doing the job is actually a partner in shaping how that work is done, rather than being told how to do it. So I think it's driven. Job crafting is driven by the individual. It's an individual phenomena, but it can absolutely take place within the organisation and the organisational context, and that has an important part in actually making it work.
Okay, how does it relate to job design, job enrichment? Is it job crafting? Have an effect also in designing job, job enrichment, something like that, or organizational development, or this is.
So I think there is certainly, in terms of some of the writers. So Sharon Parker, who's kind of a kind of world-leading kind of work design scholar and work psychology scholar. She certainly sees job crafting being part of work design, and effectively, again, what you're doing in terms of design is saying, rather than designing something purely from the top down, it's around actually recognising that the people who are doing the jobs are maybe the best people to be involved in designing how they should be done. And so therefore it's around the conversation, it's around an opportunity for people to kind of shape that. So again, coming back to this idea of the semi-tailored suit, the design is there maybe in terms of the suit. This is the work of the body of work that needs to be done, the tasks, the activities, but you're working with the individual to think about how they can shape that or improve it slightly, so it works better for themselves but better for the organisation. So they're interlinked, absolutely. And I personally would say it's within kind of work design theory. Job crafting is one element of kind of job design. Okay,
in the last 5 years, there is a movement of reinventing organizations, from Lelux and then holacracy also. How do you, what is job crafting relate to that concept?
So I'm not an expert on either of those kind of aspects, although I'm an admirer of both the work in terms of holacracy and reinventing organisations. And I think both of them, at the centre of it, is taking a humanist approach to work. So it's actually recognising that humans are messy, we kind of have different passions and strengths, and actually if you want to really get the best out of people and get the best work and best performance, you need to recognise people as humans, and recognising that we're not all identical, we're all different, and creating more agile and flexible opportunities for people to do their work, to shape them based on our own strengths, our passions, our interests. But I think for me, in terms of one of the areas that I think in terms of work design that is important is around maybe thinking about how we can break work up a little bit more. So think about work in either projects or in kind of little packets of work. So at the moment we design work around 40-hour blocks. Well, certainly in the UK, in the US and Australia, we kind of, when we think about a job, we design something around 40 hours. And what I think we'll see emerging, and this is what job crafting is a part of this, is saying actually we're going to see work more flexibly. So people will maybe do a variety of different projects or activities within their kind of portfolio of work. It's a constantly adapting, rather than saying this is your job, this is what you'll be doing 40 hours a week. It's actually saying this week you were doing these projects and this initiatives, and this, they may change slightly more the following week. So it's much more agile and changeable. And I see that being the future, and it gives people more flexibility as well. So saying you don't need to be 40 hours a week, you can actually maybe do that approach in 30 hours or 50 hours if that works for you. So it's I think that's kind of where I'm interested in learning more about holacracy and reinventing organisations and how that all kind of fits in. But the human-led approach to work is at the centre of that from my perspective, and that's what I see as the strongest link between all those disciplines. Okay,
just one more question before we go into your consultant and then your approach to this matter. Is what aspect are being crafted in job crafting?
Yeah, sure. So I think from when there in terms of different academics and different researchers could have identified different elements of job crafting in terms of the ones that I use when I'm speaking to organisations are 4 aspects. So it's around how people can craft their tasks and skills. So it's around looking at the activities that you do, and the way that you do them, and other ways of changing them. So you could change them by doing more of the things that you enjoy, less of the things you don't enjoy, or maybe changing the way that you approach a particular task. Secondly, there's relational crafting. So that's looking at and thinking about the relationships you have at work. It could be with co-workers, it could be with your managers, it could be with your colleagues, your team, the employees you manage, you're a team leader, could be your customers, but actually thinking about the kind of relationships you have, and again, how are they working for you? Are there some you want to amplify? Are there some you want to kind of dial down or change? And then taking steps to do that.
Okay.
Thirdly, there's I refer to it as purpose crafting. In Amy Wisniewski and Jane Dutton and other researchers maybe refer to it as cognitive crafting, but the centre of this is thinking about the purpose and value of your work. So actually it's reflecting and understanding what matters to you in your work that you do, and trying to find more opportunities to be reminded of that, or see the impact that you're having in the way that matters to you. And lastly, wellbeing crafting. So it's around how are there opportunities in the work that you do to find small ways to make it healthier in terms of the job that you do. So that could be, for example, taking walking meetings rather than just normal meetings. It could be taking the stairs. It could be taking more mindful in terms of taking breaks during the day. So it's around actually other ways you can design your work to make it a bit healthier.
Okay, thank you. I want to know more about your company now. It's a Tailored Thinking, right?
Tailored Thinking, yeah.
Tailored Thinking. So when did you set up, and what basically the products of this company?
So we, Tailored Thinking, I established 3 years ago. So it'll be 3 years in next week, actually. So the 3 years of the company.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So when I moved back from Australia, I went back to the UK, and that's when I started Tailored Thinking. And Tailored Thinking is we're a force for good in the world of work. So our aim is to make work better and take an evidence-based approach. So it's around how we can apply and bring the research that we know works in terms of improving well-being, in terms of performance, to workplaces, and allowing them, finding ways that they can apply it in sustainable ways. So a lot of organisations are kind of crying out for this, and there's a lot of people that are meeting these needs, but I think that maybe we're not, as consultants, as practitioners, as people working in this area, we're not always taking the evidence, using an evidence-based approach. We're not always actually thinking about what the science says, and we're not always evaluating what we do. So what I do is try and bring that interface between the two. And the work that we do is around leadership development, is around workshops and training. So job crafting is one element of it. The second that I spend a lot of my energy on is around well-being. So getting organisations to really reflect on what does well-being mean for them. And for the people within their organisation, and what are the things they can do to improve well-being. And again, that's looking at a systemic perspective as well as an individual perspective. And lastly, we do kind of consultancy projects in terms of redesigning certain processes from an HR perspective. So recently I was looking at how we can redesign performance reviews and discussions to frame them in a more coaching, strength-based approach, bringing in job crafting in terms of those discussions. So it's looking at, again, what does the science say, the research say about performance discussions, what works and what doesn't work, and then designing something with the client collaboratively that's going to allow people to do their best work.
Okay, so what do the client usually ask, or the clients need usually? Are they coming with already specifically saying that I'm interested in job crafting, or they're coming saying that I want the employee to be more enjoying their work or more happy, something like that? What is the common situation?
It's really interesting. It really depends. So some are just curious. So some recent work I've done has been with kind of growing companies in the in technology space, where they're saying actually what's really important to us is that we want to continue to foster and build a culture that people are going to stay. It's recognising that the industry is very competitive in terms of trying to attract and keep people with the skills that they need. It's how can we develop something that they just don't want to leave because it feels so good. So some work there was around what can they do to design their approach to supporting, enabling people, and that's from everything from award to kind of performance reviews or discussions or training, to encourage them to kind of want to enjoy their work and stay. That's one kind of one issue. So the challenge there was around, we're doing something good. How can we continue to do it well and keep building on that? So that was the challenge. Some organisations have specifically come to me and said, look, from a wellbeing perspective, we know this is something that we take seriously, and we know that we're not maybe as focused as we could be in terms of what we're doing, and so we want to be more intentional in terms of our wellbeing activities, and work with us to think about how we can do something. And similarly in terms of job crafting, so some of the work that I've done when people have found it, is that the reason they're finding it is they want to to think about the people experience in terms of saying how can we create a compelling experience where people enjoy what they're doing and are happier. And they know that links to performance, or their view is that it links to performance. So actually, job crafting is something that they see as being something that can be used within their workplace to kind of create a more compelling, exceptional, kind of positively deviant personal experience.
So do you have a measurement of the impact or of the result of the intervention, something like that?
Yeah, so I always try and take measurements before and afterwards. So for job crafting specifically, I use a job crafting questionnaire and feedback. So within the workshops that I run, I get people to measure before they do workshops, and then a month later, and then 6 months later in terms of coming back. And measurements that I'm interested in, particularly around whether people would recommend the sessions to other people. So do they find the sessions and the concepts engaging? But more importantly, have they used them? And then have they had any impact in terms of scores that may be important to them or important to me? So specific example, recently I did some work with Virgin Money in the UK, so a big multi kind of national organisation, but wanted to improve their people experience further, or in terms of a great place to make it even better. And there we found that 83% of people that had gone through the job crafting training had applied it, which is significantly more than you normally get. 35 to 40% learning transfer, that people apply the things from training. So people applied it, and the areas that in terms of measurement, in terms of other outcomes, we found that the majority of people also improved scores of job crafting. The different scores of job crafting were measured on an academically kind of informed scale, and they also had increases in levels of how much do you enjoy working for Virgin Money and how satisfied are you in your job. So a number of different measurements we kind of took, and they tried to. So it's looking holistically. But to be fair, and just to be open, this was after kind of we did 6 months in the year, and we don't know if that's sustainable. So it'd be what I'm interested in, and because I'm still new in terms of this work, is to go back to some of these clients and saying, are people still job crafting? Are they still using these ideas? And what can we do to make it sustainable? So just to be clear to everyone, I think it's important to kind of say what are the limitations of this. And also there's 17% of people who aren't doing this as well. So again, it's thinking about why are the people who aren't doing it doing it. So I think it's not a panacea, but I personally think it's kind of compelling, and it certainly excites me. And having come to the conference, there's real interest in this kind of space.
I believe we are moving to the right direction. We just need to fine tuning it, in terms of intervention or evaluating. But this is the direction for the future, I guess, for in the workplace. So I only have two questions. First is that any other things that you want to add on to all our discussion?
I think it's been lovely questions. I think they've been really, really interesting. I think for me, one thing that I encourage organisations to do is to experiment. I think we spend a lot of time trying to kind of create kind of really big, bold experiments or programs or initiatives as consultants or as HR. And I think actually what I'm finding is the opposite is better. So actually to test these things. So when I'm going into organisations, rather than saying I'm going to sell you this and do it for the whole organisation, it's like, well, let's try it with 1 or 2 teams, get their feedback and change it. So I think this idea of start small, get feedback, change it and be iterative. And I think that's something that I'm still learning about, but something that I think is really important. That I think we need to do more of. That's probably the one thing I'd just add to.
Okay. Just one last thing then. How could people find you then?
Thank you. That's a really nice thing. So they can find me. So my website, I'll show you here. You can see it. Tailoredthinking.co.uk, and I'm rob@tailoredthinking.co.uk, and I'm also active on Twitter and social media and LinkedIn. So @BakerRJM is my kind of Twitter handle. But I'm always open to being contacted, to sharing information and resources, because I think one of the things that comes to this conference about, one of the reasons I make the journey from London all the way to Melbourne to present, is the fact that people are generous and open, and we need to share this knowledge for people to make work better. And so please do get in touch, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob, for your time.
Thank you.
See you then.